Okay, we're live, apparently. And thank you all for being here. Um, okay, stop it. Stop broadcast. Stop recording.
Can't see those.
Yeah, it's there, trust me. Okay, now we're really live. That other one was a fake. So there you go. So we are here. We have a smaller audience tonight. People are jet setting around the country or have some kind of other family emergencies. Are jet setting around the country. I sound good, and so that tells me what the time delay is. Okay. And some people have family emergencies, family activities, and things. So the audience here is small, but we have several people online, and we are going to deliver our message. So thank you for tuning in, those of you who are tuning in. So before we get started, are there any questions?
You're dry.
Oh, my scar. Well, let's see. How do I answer the scar thing? Well, first of all, let me just say I did not cut myself shaving. That should be obvious to everyone. Um, well, it seems like I've been having some problems lately with a bear at my house. He's been eating my trash and spreading it all over the neighborhood, and I get stuck cleaning it up. So my dog and I went out a week ago or so and chased him off, and he went through my fence, which I now have to fix, and ran away. Well, this last Friday, we've been up in Oregon doing our once a quarter major shopping trip and came back, and we had just gotten to bed about 11:30, and my big dog, Malcolm, not the little 110-pound dog, but the big dog, starts barking in his ferocious bark. I want to rip somebody a new one bark. And I thought, oh, okay, so throw on the boots, throw on my headlamp, grab my gun, and go out. And there's the bear in my trash. And so Spirit, the little dog, he starts chasing him, trying to bite him in the butt. And the bear turns around, the dog dumps back. I have a wrestling match with the bear. I'm trying to get the gun out of my holster, and I can't. It's pinned against the bear. I'm strangle holding the bear. And I realize, okay, I can't finish this unless I let go of the bear. So I let go of the bear, and he's snarling. He turns around, and so then it's like, do I kill him? It's 11:30 at night, and I'm tired. I really would just rather go back to sleep. So I just shoot one shot in the ground, and the bear runs off. What? It, the bear was there.
The eye get hurt.
Oh, the eye. Oh, I scraped that today on a branch of one of my walnut trees. I had the bear had nothing to do with the eye. I just wanted to brag about fighting a bear and winning. So it happened. No, I was working out in the field and turned around and went with the branch. No, but the bear really happened. I fought a bear and I won. The bear ran away. I don't know how close I was when I was wrestling him, but yeah, there might have been a slightly larger distance between him. I was ready to do that though, but one shot and he ran away and I didn't have to, so that was good. So, we have had bear encounters before though. We used to be part of an organic farming intern program called WOOF, which stands for Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms. And we were a WOOF host farm, and we'd get these farming interns who supposedly were interested in organic farming and were willing to work in return for training and food and lodging. We eventually had to drop the program because a lot of the interns were kind of lame or really lame. And administratively, we weren't happy with the WOOF program and the way they ran things, so we dropped them. But we had a few over there, and some of them who couldn't follow directions, like don't have food in your tent, or don't camp on the property beyond a certain point, who couldn't follow those basic directions, they ended up having tents destroyed by bears. So it's not the first time. Some of these roofing interns over the years were pretty crazy. Oh, there was a time the guy, first day on the job, and it's like, okay, we got to cut this log up in firewood to get it out of the way of where we're going to be building a garden. So, if you ever cut wood, oh yeah, I've cut a lot of firewood. Great. I've got to run to the store and get a few parts at the hardware store. I'll be back in a half hour. So you cut this log up, and then if you get done before I'm back, that's fine. Just take a rest, grab some water. So I go to the store, I get back, and this intern is laying on the ground exhausted, perspiring heavily. He's like, can't even move, and he's got one round cut off this log. And I'm like, what's up with that, dude? He goes, and that's the worst saw I've ever seen. I can barely make it cut. That's awfully funny. I cut up 3 logs with it yesterday and it worked just fine. What's wrong with it? I don't know, but I can't make it work. You show me how it works. So I don't know. Whatever. About 10 seconds. Nice, another round cut off. Turn it off, turn around, look at him. He's, oh my gosh! What's that noise? He didn't know that there was this secret magical power inside something common like a saw that he thought he knew everything there was about. And he's like, now obviously, because of the look of incredulity on both of your faces, please know I would never really give someone a chainsaw without having properly trained them to use it. That part is not true. What is true is that it is possible for there to be some kind of unknown hidden power inside something common that we think we know everything about. But we really don't, because we don't know what we don't know. It's those common things, day to day, that if you work with them differently, you get a completely different result. So this hypothetical kid who didn't know the chainsaw had a motor on it to cut the wood easily. You could apply it to anything. The people who don't know that there's electricity and therefore if you plug the appliance in, it works. You know, like the electric slicer where people are taking the ham and trying to shove it through, and it's like, well, just turn it on. And, oh, you know, or the kids' electronic toys that mysteriously stop working. I guess they're broken, little John. We'll have to give them to the Goodwill. And they don't realize you've taken the batteries out because the noise is driving you nuts. So those day-to-day things, if we add the power, and by now I hope you've figured out I'm talking about the Akadawa, to everything you do. You turn it on and you do whatever it is you're going to do. And you get better results. By now you should all have experience with that phenomenon. If you don't, do something that you do every day without turning on your Akadawa, or consciously turn it off, and then try it for a time, and then go back and do the same thing with the Akadawa on. Chart your results, and you will get better results. When I was remodeling our house, you've all seen our house, and the landing that goes up to the second floor, right? Before any of that was finished, I was trying to repair a roof rafter. And I was hanging on by one hand, leaning over that 10-foot drop, trying to drive a nail at arm's length. And it was the end of the day. And I was missing badly, almost fell. I can't do that. I'm the only one here. Bonnie's in Southern California. This is no good. Oh, wait, the Akadawa. Akadawa on. Bam, 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 bam. Couldn't miss. Just that fast. just by turning it on and driving a nail. Can't lift the big heavy thing into the back of the pickup. Oh man, I got no help. I got no ramps. Oh wait, I got the Akadwa. Can't tell you the number of times that it works like that. So this Toltec work, you've heard me say before, that it doesn't matter what we're doing. It matters two things. Do it with intent, three things. Four things. Do it with intent. Put all your attention into it. Do it with the Akadwa. And preferably do it as a group. And if you're working alone, you can still connect to the group. You can still connect to the school on the higher planes. That's what it's there for. The activity we did last Saturday night after the level 3 class was the invocational dinner. You both had observations about that. Do you have any that you can share? Sorry.
More like the trees.
Well, that, or just, so you had another one too, but yeah, so you were seeing through the portal that was open. That was created and it now connects that specific location in the higher planes to the school, and the school is us. If you use the Akadwa right, you can connect to that place anytime you need to, or anytime you desire to. Connect to that place while you meditate. Tell me, or tell us again, your observation. One of the things you said right at the end. You may have only been talking to Bonnie, but I think I overheard. It's okay, you don't have to be scared if you don't recall.
I don't recall what I was saying.
You said something to the effect about, oh, we're Toltecs now. Remember that? You and two others had that comment. Because that was part of the intent for that event. When we're doing this work day by day, we meditate, we work with intent, we work with attention, we journal, because by journaling these same things, it's creating neural pathways. You're doing these activities. So I'm going to do my spiritual thing, and then I'm going to go to my work thing, and then I'm going to take care of my kids thing. Oh, and then I'm going to go shopping, and now I'm going to clean the house, and now I'm going to go clean the yard, and now I'm going to go trim the alpaca's hooves, and whatever it is, right? But at some point, there's a couple of subtle thresholds that we cross mentally. We cross a threshold where we realize everything we do is the spiritual work. Everything you do here counts towards building our school in that higher plane place that we tapped into last Saturday. The other little threshold is when you start, something is bugging my nose, pardon me. And the other threshold is you start to identify with the Toltec work, not as, oh, I'm going to do that Toltec work, but that I am a Toltec. I am a Tolteca, and I'm going to go do my Toltec work. It's that identity with yourself as a Toltec, that identity that you are part of this greater whole is very specific. Not just the greater whole of humanity, which is true, but as a Toltec, we are in a caste that has higher knowledge, higher capabilities, and therefore higher responsibilities towards humanity. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't really remember saying that word, but what it felt like is that I really resonated with the idea that it was remembering, not really learning, like remembering what you already knew.
Yeah, hold that
And
thought.
and that
I-
made me kind of feel more connected to
That
this history.
that was exactly what we've been going through for the last month and a half. We talked a lot about the history, we talked a lot about the philosophy. It culminated last Saturday in that event to get that exact response. Did you have anything like that?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, the link is there now. So the more you meditate, hint,
Yeah.
the more likely that is going to occur for you. I got to go grab my beverage, which I left over here so I wouldn't spill it. Not that that's ever happened.
We have 3 online viewers, 4 online viewers.
So who's online?
Bonnie, Stephanie, Maria, and a mystery person.
Bonnie, Stephanie, Maria, and a mystery person. Hello, Bonnie. We miss you. I had to go get my own beverage because you couldn't make it tonight. Hi, Maria. How's the weather back there? You don't have to answer that question, Maria. But if you have any other questions, please type them in. And which Stephanie?
Stephanie Elaine Golden Falcon.
Ah, that's Stephanie. I hope you're doing better, Stephanie. And thanks for tuning in. And hello, mystery person. I wonder who you could be. The same mystery person, no doubt, who's always here. So that was what we're going for. And so, yeah, it'll help if you ramp up your meditations. And when you meditate, using some of those techniques from the shamanic weekend a couple months ago, and you specifically go to that place that we saw last Saturday, that's the place to meditate from, is go there. Once you have made this identity switch and you've awakened or remembered something from your past, a lot of us have that. When we get into this work, we resonate with this. It's as if we've done it before. It's as if we've had other lifetimes in the Toltec lineage, or maybe we've lived this lifetime before. But there's something about it that is a remembering. And then that is when we now start to work as a Toltec party. We aren't just a bunch of people studying Toltec philosophy like a college course. Oh yeah, this semester is ancient Greek philosophy, next semester is Toltec philosophy, next semester is Celtic philosophy, and it's like whatever, right? This isn't just an academic exercise. This is for real. It really counts. We're really changing ourselves, changing our group, and changing the world. This is the real deal. There's no do-overs. Well, maybe if you spill your tea, you get to do another one. But we're trying to save humanity, even if we have to drag them kicking and screaming into being saved. Nah, we won't drag those.
That sounds like a waste of time.
You know, people, it's in the scriptures from just about every system that you have to ask, right? The secrets of the universe are right there. All you have to do is ask. Some people never ask. We're not trying to save the ones who never ask. We will be working to save as much of humanity as asks to be saved. We create conditions, we turn on the light bulb, and the people wandering in the darkness in the wilderness, oh, a light. Let's go check out the light. And they'll come over. We'll say, what? You don't have the Akadua? Oh, well, we can fix that. And so forth. Right? So this is where some of the other work I've been doing for about 6+ years is captured partially in my Facebook group called What We Know. I know you're on it. Are you on it?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I am.
What we know is kind of based on the premise that what if what we think we know isn't what we really know? Meaning, what if on every field of human endeavor there's extra knowledge that not everybody knows, but somebody knows, or a small group of people knows, but not everybody knows. Sort of like not everybody knows that big weight hanging on the end of that clumsy saw blade is a motor that can help you cut wood faster, just like my hypothetical woofer. And while that incident never did happen, never would happen on my watch, because I would never give a clueless city slicker a chainsaw and say, figure it out, and hope they didn't cut off their hand. We had plenty of other stories that are just as extreme, like spending literally a month trying to teach a New York City slicker how to build fire. Okay, this is something that we teach kids in Cub Scouts, how to build a fire. By the time they get into Boy Scouts, oh wait, we don't have Boy Scouts anymore. Back last century, there used to be an organization called Boy Scouts that we used to teach things like camping and cooking and how to build fire and how to survive in the wilderness. And this kid in his mid-20s, after a month, could not build a fire. Bonnie and I were gone overnight, and he was there with our foster son, who all he liked to do was sit in his room and play video games. And so this New York kid was basically in a cold house, and it wasn't like middle of the winter cold, it was like March or April cold. So it was probably never below freezing, but it was never like warm. And I could tell when we got back, based on the wood that was stacked up in our little firebox, which you guys have both seen by my wood stove there, they hadn't lit a fire once the time we were gone. I watched him 3 or 4 times go in, try to light a fire, not do it right, and walk away. And it's like, you gonna finish this? No? Okay. So yeah, I've got stories, which I could tell all night, but the point is, you have to apply yourself. This kid never applied himself. So the Toltec work is the same. We have to apply ourselves. We have to meditate. We have to journal. We have to record our dreams. Oh, I did not want to get up at 3 last night and write my dreams down, but I did. Oh, it was like pulling myself out of a deep quagmire of thick goo to sit up and walk in. It's like, oh. Then I was up for an hour because I couldn't go back to sleep. That's the life of a Toltec. Welcome. So when we go forward with this what we know stuff, the way this ties in is there's information in history, in archaeology, in medicine, in engineering, in physics, in chemistry, that every single thing we accept as normal isn't the optimum that we have. And I'm not talking about theoretical knowledge that in 50 years we might have a better mousetrap kind of stuff. I'm talking about technology on the shelf, proven with patents, medicine, medical knowledge, cures for illnesses, non-polluting energy production, non-polluting transportation, all of these kind of things right now. Why don't we have it? Politics and money and paradigms. You all familiar with when I say a paradigm, what I mean by that?
I mean, it's like the overall belief of humanity or something kind
Yes.
of. Yeah.
That's it exactly.
Okay.
So my favorite example of by far from the only one is the concept of the flat earth paradigm. If you lived in Europe in 1491, you knew that the earth was flat. It's a big flat disk, somewhere out there was the edge. If you went too far, you fell off and died. What you fell off, where you fell off, don't bother anybody with those kind of questions, because that's the paradigm. Everybody knew that that was true because the Roman Catholic Church said it was true. It was completely unknown in Europe in 1491 that in about 200 BC, several Greek philosophers had actually drawn the correct model with the sun at the center of the solar system and the earth going around it, and the earth was a globe and the moon was a globe, and had it all figured out. The one whose name I remember is Eratosthenes, who was a Greek living in Egypt, and he was able to make some measurements on the equator and several hundred miles north and did triangulation, and he got the answer to within like 100 miles of the diameter of the earth. Incredible accuracy given the crude limitations of his instruments. So that data was not widely available in Europe. There might have been 2 people who knew, who'd read it somewhere. It was flat earth. Crazy Columbus was, as we talked about the Toltec philosophy, was the last person to figure out that he could sail across the Atlantic Ocean and get to some other land masses. But he had the best publicity. He had the backing of a royal family in Spain. And when he came back with his stuff and his people and his exotic plants and his exotic gold, it's like, wow. The paradigm shifted. So Thomas Kuhn, back in the 1970s, did a study. It started out as his PhD thesis. It later became a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And he's the one who made the word paradigm famous, at least in obscure scientific circles. And it's exactly what you described, a widespread set of beliefs of all of humanity, or most of humanity, about the way something is in the world, and it's so accepted that it's never questioned. They get up and they never question whether the earth was flat or circular. It's like, if it ever came up, yeah, the earth is this flat disk, so I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do that. They never questioned it. What if our model is wrong? Never questioned. And then all of a sudden, here comes new data, like Columbus sailed to the west and arrived in the east. He still thought at that point he had reached like the Indies, like the islands off India. He thought he'd basically sailed to Asia the way. They had the size all wrong in their estimates, and they had completely missed the American continents. Didn't know about it. But he had a map that he made and said, oh, we go here and this is how we get to India. I actually think he had the Peary-Reis map, which said the land was already there and he knew right where he was going, but that's another story for another day. Because there's a lot of maps that showed America, Greenland, and all these different things. Even Antarctica, as the coastline existed without ice, which since we've found Antarctica has never been the case. You have to go way back until you find the continent of Antarctica without ice, and there were ancient maps drawn of that. Just one of those little tidbits in the what we know world. So we have a world that could be radically different right now. Every disease you can imagine has been cured, and there are cures for dozens of ways, from cancer to heart disease to diabetes, on down the list. Why aren't we using them? Money and power. We can post all the Facebook memes we want about all of that. And we might get through to one person every now and then. Wait a minute, why is there a meme about something about the Earth being round? Everybody knows the Earth is flat. And this is one of my favorite pet peeves lately because it's one of the test cases for dumbing down the population. In the last year to 2 years, all of a sudden the flat Earth movement is back. Really? Did you guys take a science class where they walk through all the data that shows if you shine light on a round object, you get these things, and you move around it, you get the phases of the moon, or if you look at through the telescope, the phases that we can see on Venus and Mars and all the other round planets? Did you ever look at those science classes? But there's people, celebrities on down, who are buying into the idea that the world is flat. My favorite was this nut that earlier this year built a steam-powered rocket to launch himself high enough he was going to take a picture of the flat edge of the Earth. And he crash landed. He was in the hospital for a while, but he didn't die, amazingly enough. And his data were inconclusive. Well, I don't seem to have gone high enough to have gotten my data. He had saved an impressive amount of money to do that. 1.6 million was the number I read. For a fraction of that, he could have gotten a ride in a spaceship and orbited Earth. These like Elon Musk, it's less than $1 million to go for a ride in space right now. If you have $1 million, you can go for a ride. He could have done that. Instead, he's launching this rocket into the Nevada desert and crashes and almost dies for nothing, right? So we have a new paradigm we have to build for humanity. Facebook memes can be personally satisfying. Take that, you troll. But do they really work? Have any of you ever changed an opinion that you have previously researched based on a Facebook meme?
Change my opinions of people.
Oh, of the people. Oh man, I can't even begin to tell you the amount of people that I've defriended or who have defriended me over some of these issues. You know, I mean, pick one. This year alone, I've probably lost 20 friends over Second Amendment rights by saying the Second Amendment is how we defend all the others. And now, thanks to the British, I could talk, well, more specifically the English, I could talk all day make jokes about the British and the English and gun rights and the whole American Revolutionary history. But they've outlawed guns, right? So now what are people doing? They're attacking and killing each other with knives. Like little kitchen knives. We're not even talking about broadswords or claymores or samurai swords. We're talking about kitchen knives. And so now they've outlawed the sale of kitchen knives in England. How they cut their steak, I don't know. But that's what they're doing. And there's tons of memes out there that are a great laugh. The one I saw today was a guy, modern photo of a guy dressed like a British redcoat with the curly haired wig and all the whole 9 yards. And I don't even remember what it said. I just saw the picture. It's like, oh, another stupid British meme, right? Because oh, I do remember what it was about. Unfortunately, just recently in London, a teenage kid got shot and killed on the street doing, I don't know what he was doing, I don't know any of the circumstances, but the meme was about, wait a minute, I thought Britain outlawed guns. This shouldn't be happening. The point being that criminals don't obey the law. It's kind of a definition. It's built into the, what is a criminal? A criminal is someone who doesn't obey the law and deliberately and knowingly violates the law. So you can pass laws from here until Judgment Day, and the criminals don't care because the criminals aren't going to follow them. If they want to use a gun to go rob a bank, they're going to use a gun to go rob a bank. It doesn't matter that you've outlawed guns. It doesn't matter that robbing the bank is against the law. They're going to do it. So the laws aren't what protect people. People protect people. So I've lost friends over that. I've lost friends over chemtrails. I've defriended people over alternative health things. I had the audacity, what was it, a month ago? I made a statement that it was either genetically modified foods, or it might have been something to do with table salt. I can't remember. That resulted in a defriending. I defriended one of my former graduate level nutrition students who was bashing me, her former nutrition instructor, for me bashing genetically modified foods and the evil corporations that are allowing this harm to our health to continue. And so I defriended her. The next day, I get a new friend request from her, which I just deleted. But if I could go back retroactively and change your A to an F, I would, but I couldn't. Right? Because it was like 2 years earlier when she was in graduate school and I was teaching her. I didn't even teach at that school anymore. But you have to be willing to engage. You have to be willing to think. So all these examples I've thrown out here, this is about the human paradigm. We aren't going to win it with Facebook memes. We're not going to win it with the public education system. The public education is one of the biggest problems in society right now, is it has become corrupted. Corrupt politicians have corrupted education, the whole Common Core math experience, the Common Core English, whatever else is in Common Core. If I had a kid in school age, and I know both of you do, I would not have that kid in school, in a public school. Private school, yes. Public school, not a chance. There's just too much propaganda being rammed down their throat of the wrong kind, completely the wrong kind. So think about that. The whole Toltec philosophy, one of the major tiers on that pyramid is education. Start early with the attitude that your children are not children. They're these wise, intelligent, incredibly divine beings whose bodies aren't yet mature. But that doesn't change the fact that their essence is this wise, divine being. They're simply adults that are still in training. And if you adopt that little subtle shift right now, at the earliest stage possible, and you tell them, you're a wise, divine being, your body isn't fully developed, you're still making nerve cell connections in your brain and in your body, and your body is growing into its potential. Teach them to continue to identify with their essence, not with their body.
Been doing that all along.
Good for you, Mom.
Trying to teach her to think for herself.
That one is key. In my new book coming out, I talk about that. That one of the keys was that that's what my parents did. They didn't always agree with my decisions when they taught me to think for myself. Especially ones like when I'm in first grade and I fire organized religion, and that kind of shocked my mom and my dad. I've told that story. So when it happens to you, just okay, you're making your own decision. I remember my dad was once asked, I can't remember which of his organizations he was in, they were doing some program with kids and drugs. And I don't know if it was the Masons or if it was the American Legion or his historical society or any one of the many other public service organizations he's been involved with over the years. And they were doing all these awareness programs trying to teach kids don't mess up your life by, doing drugs. And several of the people, the adults on this committee, had kids who'd had drug problems. And one of them turned to, hey, kid, your kids never did drugs, do they? He's like, no. Well, why not? And he says, I don't know. I'll ask him. So he called me up and asked me. I'm like, I don't know. Why didn't I do drugs? I thought about it for a couple minutes. I said, Dad, I think it's because you taught me to think for myself. And that made his day. I thought for myself because you taught me how to do that. And I decided I didn't like what it could do to your mind and body. And I didn't like the idea of getting in car accidents or anything like that because I was high on drugs or alcohol or anything like that. So I just decided to skip that part. And it made his day, he said, to hear me say that. So good for you. And good for you. So the paradigm, why do paradigms exist? You have to talk a little bit while you're here.
Well, negative reasons they exist. I mean, I think there's a lot of being kept in the dark.
Yeah, so that's right. But okay, let me back up. What is the mechanism by which paradigms exist or are maintained?
Ignorance, self-policing.
Think bigger picture.
Like I said, the tendency to all agree on something
Why? Yes, but why?
so we can all get along.
Partially, you're spiraling in.
Fit in. I don't know.
You're following her.
Creates a society.
Anybody online have a thought on this?
Nobody yet.
Everybody's quiet. What is I talk about the most of what the Toltec work will do for us?
Raise your consciousness.
It'll upgrade our consciousness. It's the collective consciousness that we're all tapping into. It's like we can all download the same document from the cloud, right? It's up there, it's on a website in the sky, we can download the same thing. That's what's going on with the human collective consciousness. We have, our own energy fields. You've heard me talk about the energy bodies and the light bodies, and we have these higher bodies that correspond to the higher planes. We have, part of that is the human collective consciousness. It's an interaction actually with the Earth's magnetic field. So we're actually using the Earth to amplify human collective consciousness. But this is that, what do they call it, the 100th monkey phenomenon, right? You get the monkeys in a room typing and one of them will randomly end up typing out Shakespeare, and as soon as he types out Shakespeare, they all know it. Like there was an experiment done in Japan on some of these little tiny outlying islands where there's these wild monkeys. And on one of the island, they gave them stuff, right? One of them figured out how to open and close screw caps on lids or something, and all of a sudden, instantly, all the monkeys on all the islands knew that skill. Instantly, just like that. It's that collective consciousness. Even science has this proof of collective consciousness being the case, and we don't go there, right? That's academia for you, because there's not a triple blind, quadruply controlled study replicated 18 times to prove it, so we're going to ignore it. That's academia. That's why I'm not an academician in the classic sense. They work too slowly. By design, they don't want human progress to progress too fast. It's already going at breakneck speed, right? When you look at the last 100+ years, what's happened since, let's say, 1900? We went from being horse and buggy to now we're flying to other planets. And in barely enough time on it, you draw all of human history going back tens of thousands of years. And then right here, we went from, in the last, little bit, we've gone from horse and buggy, and now we're flying spaceships. Like that. So what if we went faster? What else could we be doing? That's the work in what we know. That's what collective consciousness can do by changing paradigms. So that's what we want to do. We want to change paradigms, but we can't force it on people. We have to make it available for people. A new paradigm. The other piece of the Thomas Kuhn work, which you may or may not have heard, is he went back to the ancient Greeks, 300 or 400 BC, up until the time he wrote this in the 1970s, so 40+ years ago now. And he looked at every major scientific advance, whether it was in the field of chemistry or physics or engineering, whatever. And he documented that the same thing happens every time. New data comes out which says the old model is wrong or incomplete, whatever the model was, atomic structure, for example. And now, here's the new model. Well, instantly, everybody working in the field will look at this new model and try to prove it or disprove it. And if it can be easily disproven, it quickly gets thrown away. Well, that's wrong. You just proved it wrong. And it's forgotten. It's a footnote in history. But the ones that can't be immediately disproven, we go, well, wait a minute. This model is completely different than our current model, but darn it, I can't make it go away. I can't prove it wrong. But if it's right, well, then my whole world comes crashing down. Because I built a career on this old model. So I'm going to ignore this new model. And what Kuhn observed is that all the experts working in whatever field of science would polarize. Some would support the new model. Some would dogmatically cling to the old. At usually a 50-50 ratio. Half would go each way. Now we look back, hundreds of years later, the new model was right. It was more complete and more accurate and explained things the old model did, but then also the things the old model could not. That's what happens. When that happened, the people who dogmatically clung to the old model never changed their mind. Ever. They went to their graves believing in the old model. And he noticed that it didn't just take one, it took 2 generations. The first generation of skeptics and then their immediate disciples, the people they personally trained, literally had to die. And then the people coming into the field were far enough removed from the emotion of that split that they would come in, and even if they were being trained by the second generation of skeptics, they go, well, wait a minute, come on, boss. You don't really believe that, do you? Look at all this data. No, you're full of it. I'm going over here. And after 2 generations, everybody comes in, and now we have a new paradigm. Molecules aren't just this big, vague, bulbous mass. They're actually composed of particles called atoms, and atoms are composed of particles called electrons, protons, and neutrons. And that became the new paradigm. Until more data and a new paradigm. We know that those are composed of quarks. And then new data, new paradigm, and quarks are composed of strings. And nobody's been able to break that down further. We can't even write the equations for it. It's too complex, let alone solve them. But the data there, that it looks like string theory, or its modern equivalent M theory, is the best description of matter / energy. But that's what happens, 2 generations. So when we have this, a knee-jerk reaction has been in the last 1 to 200 years to suppress the new models, sometimes violently, even by killing people. You invented a better mousetrap? Well, guess what? That's not fair to my economic well-being. I'm going to squash you and your mousetrap. Whether the mousetrap is a 200 mile per gallon carburetor, or whether it's free energy, or whether it's a cure for cancer, or anything, right? It's all suppressed. And this has been going on well over 100 years, probably pushing 200 years. We don't like, we humanity, if you have a financial interest in the old model, have now not just let society play out on a neutral playing field. The playing field has been tipped in your advantage to make it really hard for the new models to make it into the human collective consciousness. More than 100 years ago, Nikola Tesla was doing his work, and he's ruthlessly excluded from textbooks in engineering, in physics, in any other field where his discoveries could revolutionize what we know. And you could go through Royal Rife in the treatment of cancer, on down the list, many, 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 many others. And the problem is that unlevel playing field. So with the Toltec consciousness work, we are building this little Toltec party. And by putting stronger signals out there into the human collective consciousness, all we're doing is trying to re-level the playing field, right? We're trying to give people a chance to become aware. Oh, wait a minute. And I've seen this in my clinical work over the last 20 years. I don't have to die of cancer. No. You can get rid of your cancer and die 50 years from now, falling off a roof, putting up Christmas lights on your retirement home in Florida. That story actually happened. One of my books, where they did some research on cancer treatments, went back and they found some studies where all these people got better spontaneously with no medical treatment. Their bodies decided to heal the cancer, which we have DNA and all kinds of other things built in our bodies that can do. And so this group of authors was going around looking to the medical literature, and they wanted to go find all these individual people who had experienced, the ones that were still alive, experienced these things. So they found this guy, oh, he's living down in Florida. So they flew to Florida, go to his house the day before. He had fallen on, he was about 88 at this time. He'd been up on the roof, putting up Christmas lights, fell off and died. So that's sad. He should have sent somebody younger up. He probably didn't have quite the hand-eye coordination he thought he did at that age. And he died. But he didn't die of cancer 50 years earlier when they told him he was going to. Tons and tons of stories like these. So the question becomes, why? are we not? That unlevel playing field, the dark side, if you want to look at the yin-yang symbol, the dark side of the universe, the adversary, the Darth Vaders of the world, are tipping the deck by using frequency against us, by using awareness, by using very subtle but powerful mind control technology and techniques that were mastered by the Germans in the era leading up to World War II. Not so much during World War II, they didn't have time. It was that decade leading up to World War II, so from 1928 to 1938. That was when their propaganda machine kicked in. That's when they developed all the models that brought Adolf Hitler to power, and Goebbels and Hering and all those guys, Hermann Goering and all those people, right? Masters at manipulating public sentiment. Our government is using those exact techniques right now. You know, whatever enemy comes up and questions you need the war, you challenge them on their patriotism. You're un-American. We have to go invade this small country on the other side of the world because we're defending democracy here at home. How dare you question us? I don't recall Kuwait or any of those countries attacking us. And then 10 and 20 years later, we find out, oh, Iraq asked us, hey, you know, we've got this age-old problem with Kuwait, and we want to go in militarily, and we want to take back our seaport because we lost a seaport. So that's what we want to do. Are you okay with that? Because we don't want to, you're the United States. We don't want to upset you. Can we have your permission to go do that? And we said, yeah, sure, Kuwait or Iraq. You go do that, and we're okay. We will stand back. Well, the instant they invade, we said, oh my gosh, look at that attack on democracy. Kuwait is an ally of Saudi Arabia, and we're an ally of Saudi Arabia, so we're going to go in. Total setup. That happened. Total wag the dog setup. So that's the kind of manipulation that goes on, right? And then, wait a minute, why are we going to war? It's like a war that we created. We created ISIS, we created all these people, right? If you read George Orwell's book, 1984, if you haven't done it, please do. If you haven't read it lately, go read it again. The way they control the society is they've learned that the model is you create a continuous war. Never meant to win the war. When we had the first moments after the 9/11 attacks, and I think this was President Bush II, the younger, yeah, he came on and he said something to the effect that we don't know how long this is an evil war. This is war against terror. They hide everywhere. We might have to go everywhere. We don't know how long this war will last. It might never end. He could have been reading out of George Orwell's book when he said that. And that's what's going on. That was 2001. That was 17 years ago. We've been at war continuously ever since. If you're continuously in a state of war, it's really hard to do the spiritual work, to do anything else productive, right? You're constantly looking over your shoulder. And that's exactly what is intended. So that's the paradigm we are fighting against. We have to level that table. When we embrace these ideas of the Toltec philosophy, of working as a group, of using our collective consciousness of this group to change the human paradigm, that's the only way we have a chance to level that playing field. And why wait 2 generations? If we use the right techniques, we can shorten that. It's like, wait a minute, why do I have to wait for 1 generation of geezers and a second generation of geezers who can't advance and whose minds aren't flexible and are incapable of learning? Why do we have to wait for 2 generations of those kind of people to die before we get to have the new paradigm that's now already 40 years out of date? Because somebody's already invented something else or discovered something else. What if we shorten it to 1? What if we shorten it to none? What if we get a new discovery and we say, Holy Moses Indi, right? And say, look at this. And we put it out there and the paradigm shifts like that. We actually have that ability right now. We have to do it though. And so this Toltec work going forward, we have a core information that I want you to learn. But after that, we have a lot of flexibility in which direction we go as a school and where we decide to focus our attention. And the school as a whole needs to be who decides, not just me. Not just me. We can pick any subject in that what we know work. We can pick any activity that's positive for humanity and work that activity and start putting a higher level of consciousness and a higher level of paradigm out into the collective consciousness. We need to pick one, or we don't even have to limit it to one, but we don't want to try and fix everything because then our signal gets too weak. So 1, maybe 2 at a time. Is all that making sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I want to do now is I'm going to go over a few announcements on our schedule for a few things coming up over the next month or 2. We can talk about them a little. Anybody online have any questions?
Yeah.
Not yet. Okay. My talkative friends. This Saturday, we are at the craft fair here in Reading at the Bead Man. I don't remember the start time, but I believe the start time is 9 o'clock. Bonnie and Jessica are heading that one up. And if you have questions, if you're available this Saturday, would like to help, we're going to be spreading the Akadwa and selling some Akadwa crystal artwork and wands that are produced up in Mount Shasta by the artist John Kirby, who has his Akadwa level 2, makes these phenomenal pieces that are just incredible, anywhere from this big to literally this big. And we're going to have some of them, a small selection to sell there at this craft fair. The Bead Man, everyone knows where the Bead Man is? Over on Park Marina Drive there, same general neighborhood. That's where it is. So if you are available, please and can help, please contact Bonnie. If not, and you just want to come by, bring lots of friends, load up a van or 2, come down to the craft fair and have them get the Akadwa, have them buy some of our Akadwa ones.
How late does that go till?
That is a good question for Bonnie. Can you type a question there? Maybe Bonnie will see it. I don't know the exact hours.
I might be working that morning.
9 to
but
4
come later.
p.m.
9 to 4. Okay. Thank you, Bonnie. We are having a discourse day next week. We're going to continue a little bit of this exploration of how to use the Akadwa and how to do some paradigm shifting. And we're going to be moving into discussions of one of the 4 required books for the school, specifically EJ's book, the Human Biological Machine as a Transformational Apparatus. So that's what we're going to be moving into, and we'll spend some time on that. Next Wednesday, we are starting a series of work opportunities up at our labyrinth. So every Wednesday we're going to be working on gardens and the labyrinth. That's also one of the activities going on next Saturday the 19th on our Shamanic Consciousness Day, which I'll talk more about in a minute. But next Wednesday the 16th is also Bonnie's birthday. So come on out if you can and help us in the garden a little while, and then we will possibly, it is theoretically possible, there could be chocolate cake with ice cream at this event. Just a possibility. 19th, Saturday, there's a flyer over here for those of you who didn't get it earlier. It looks like this. This has morphed a little bit, but we're going to be doing some specific consciousness work. I have 2 specific exercises I'm teaching, and we're going to be doing group work on the labyrinth. There's also a page over there, I don't have one here, it's front and back, it's a description of the labyrinth at Glen Haven, and then some of its capabilities. So this is a chance to do group work. We will be sharing our energy, our perceptions, and it's not so much reactivating, but getting the physical world caught up to what the labyrinth is as a portal on the higher planes. And working on it is transformational for anyone in the school. And once we've got it configured again, anyone in the school can come over and walk the labyrinth as often as you want. You can come every day if you want. And every time you walk the labyrinth, you're experiencing something transformational. So this becomes part of our work and part of how we're going to create new paradigms for people. So this Saturday is there. We're going to have some early work for just the students, and then at 8:30 we have a few people that we're inviting, or if you know anyone that you would like to invite to do this and participate, then from about 8:30 to 3:30 we could have guests in there, and then in the evening we're going to have, late afternoon, evening, some more consciousness work, and then we'll have a group meal and then a fireside chat. So that's next Saturday the 19th. Are you in town?
That's really, I'd love to be a part of that.
Yeah, well, the labyrinth will not be finished on this day. There will be plenty of opportunities to do this. And anybody who can't make it that day, the techniques we're teaching and presenting will be offered again in the future. So we will make sure you get caught up to speed. So don't worry about that. Discourse Day, Monday the 21st. Friday, May 25th is movie night. Mr. Bodensteiner has graciously offered to host a movie night again, and we will be watching the movie Gattaca. I don't have the whole little write-up on that, but it's got some powerful messages in it that I want people to hear. And I think that's all I'm going to talk about in terms of going through announcements and the schedule. Any questions on any of this? Any questions online? Okay. Any other questions not on the schedule? On how to change the world? How to bet horse races?
Maria's got a question.
Yeah,
Can you talk more about mystery power objects? Like, how can you know?
mystery power objects. Can you define what you mean by a mystery power object?
Probably gonna be about 30 seconds to a minute.
You always type the question in there for her.
No, she's got to listen, and then there's about a 20-second delay, and then at least when we were looping here, it was 20 seconds. Wisconsin's a long ways away, you know.
You said, yeah, you said something about an object can be powerful. Something unknown.
Oh, that goes back to the opening. I used the example of a chainsaw. And if somebody didn't know that there was a mystery power in it, like the gasoline engine, that they're out there taking a whole chainsaw trying to do this and cut a log. And so it was kind of a rhetorical question. Is it possible then that there could be power in something that we think of as common? Like this kid thought of a saw like this. Yeah, I know how to cut wood. Give him a chainsaw and he was clueless, right? So it's a hypothetical, rhetorical question about, can anything we are doing have a power in it that we didn't know about? And I'm alluding to the Akadwa. And if you put your attention and turn on the Akadwa into anything you do, you will get better results. So I had my hanging off the side of a building trying to drive a nail without turning on the Akadwa consciously, and then I couldn't hit the nail. And then I turned on the Akadwa consciously and I couldn't miss the nail, right? Same hammer, hanging off the same high fall if I had let go, right? And the same nail, I had gotten it started, but I couldn't hit it to drive it in. Same nail, same board, same hammer, same meat. Turn on the Akadwa, got very different results. So the power I'm talking about is what you put into it. You turn on the Akadwa, and you have a high level of Akadwa now. So what every day, every activity is my encouragement to all of you people who hold the Akadwa is turn it on and use it. Don't use the electric can opener and not have it plugged in. Yeah, you could jam the can there and crank the can around, and you could probably eventually open the can. But turn it on, and it's a lot easier and more efficient. Whatever you put your attention and your Akadwa into will get better, more successful at everything you do. The other example where I thought you were going, and I thought you were talking about some things we mentioned when you were here last week, is what the ancient Toltecs did with their artwork, which is as they create a work of art, whatever it is, whether it's a statue or a fresco or a painting or a written work of art or a written work of writing or even a PowerPoint demonstration. If you put your Akadwa into that as you create it with an intent, then later on, anyone else can come along, view that artwork, and if they're awake to the possibility, they will see things in the artwork where they go, there's more here than meets the eye. And they can send their Akadwa and they can receive information from this artwork It's above and beyond what's visibly there. That's what I thought you were going to ask about. And this is also true. Just like, you just put your Ocado into whatever task at hand, and suddenly this hammer, the same 32-ounce framing hand, carpenter's framing hammer, all of a sudden it was more effective and more powerful because I turned on the Ocado. So that's what I was referring to.
I've been using the Ocado to charge my food because I'm having so many food allergies, and
Yeah.
certain foods are causing me to have really bad hiccups that make me throw up sometimes. And
Pay
I find
attention.
that when
and
I
you,
charge it, it doesn't happen.
yeah, those foods are probably some you should minimize.
I do anyways, but
Yeah.
sometimes you can't avoid it.
Right. We do that at restaurants. We just did that recently. It's like, well, okay, we were at a group eating event and it had some ingredients in that we knew we didn't want, but we had to eat it. We neutralized it, energized it, and then when it felt right, then we ate it.
Mhm.
So that's a perfect example. And at the invocational dinner, that's what Bonnie was talking about, is that's how you make food with Toltec philosophy. Every slice, every stir of the pot, every ingredient is the dishes she's going to make, the ingredients she chooses, the spices that are added, the condiments, the layout on the table, everything that went into that was chosen with the Okadawa and with the intent of that event in mind. We were creating a connection to something higher. We filled the room with Toltec artwork and Toltec symbolism. We had reeds and rushes in the room with a fountain. We had mica as the centerpiece, which is part of what was on the old pyramids at Teotihuacan. Not our piece of mica. I would love to have one of those, but a piece of mica that has that same energy. And you saw the results, you in particular, and several other people saw through the veil to where we were going. And when I had more than half the group picking that up, seeing it, then that's feedback to me that, yeah, I know that what we did was successful. It's not just enough for me to see it, it's all of you, it's the school to see it. And to connect with that energy and make it a part of you. That was the intent. To walk away from there knowing that you were a Toltec. Any other questions on that? Okay. I think we're going to call it there. So we can go offline. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.